So the 5 foot would be the platform? That's what the city would like to see?
Normally, we would call a structure. First off, we would define a structure as anything that's over 6 feet tall, but the platform being part of the yurt structure itself and being, well, flammable would be something that we would request be 5 feet from the side yard setback. The lot area in question, 26,000 square feet, we felt that there was room enough to push back. It was no more than 2 or 3 feet.
Okay, and then the rear setback, I believe, is 5 feet right now. And is that acceptable in terms of a rear yard setback?
Actually, the rear yard setback, we had also requested that they push to the 15-foot rear yard setback for the rearmost yurt.
1.5?
15.
15 feet, I'll point out, is across the board the minimum requirement in the RM zones.
And didn't we, though, just change our code to try to encourage secondary dwelling units by removing some of those setback requirements?
Secondary units are, a existing facility is allowed in within the 5 yard setback. In fact, they can be right on the property line, but they have to meet the fire code. So if you had like windows or a non-fire rated wall, you would have to redesign that building, say if it was a garage, to have a fire rated wall at the property line or within the 5 yard setback. New structures are put 4 feet from the property line. That was a negotiation with the fire department, I believe.
Okay. And then I was not finding the definition of this distinction between overnight structures, but like I said, I will quickly look at what Mr. Merkamp just cited to you, and I have more questions, but they're not on either of these two topics. So if other commissioners have questions on the structure or the noise, maybe it'd be better to take them sort of topically.
Okay. Commissioner Myers.
I was just curious how the code deals with a tent, because you outlined what the code deals with: facilities, open, enclosed, residential, non-residential. How would the code deal with, for example, Mr. Moore's niece living in the tent in the backyard?
I don't think the code uses the word tent. I think it would say that we're looking at either an enclosed or open facility. And so it could be argued that a tent enclosure is something that's enclosed. There's a question about temporary activities and temporary facilities. And there was an attempt about 7 years ago during the Great Recession to allow for temporary use permits, particularly in downtown lots that weren't going to develop with larger buildings at the time, and some people wanted to use them for parking lots, and they were prohibited to have surface parking lots. That went through somewhat of the planning process, but it was ultimately stopped at the Planning Commission level because they didn't want to be issuing temporary permits for things that they wanted to hold out for the higher and better uses that we envisioned in our regulations. So we don't really have a procedure to deal with in the planning code a temporary use. So if for instance, if this permit gets issued, this community assembly civic, it would be a conditional use permit in our code, and that would be a permanent use, and it would run with the land.
So when Ms. St. Ange visited the planning counter and was told that no permit was needed for the structure she was planning to erect, was that correct?
I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure what the context of it was. It sounds like it was several years ago, and so our codes have changed a lot for small structures. Technically, just about anything requires design review and has over the last 4 or 5 years. It may not every permit may require a building permit, but any exterior change is subject today to some level of design review. That may be an over-the-counter process. It may be something more extensive where it involves public notification. But our design review standards, our design review regulations have been evolving rapidly. In the 15 years I've been here, I've failed to keep track of how many times it's changed, but we have a lot more authority over design review than we have done in the past, and so it's possible what she was told 5 or 6 years ago was quite accurate and has now changed.
Okay.
Commissioner Fern.
So as part of the application, were the yurts proposed to be taken down, or were they proposed to remain in their